Hi there, welcome to Political Insider. My name's James. I have a very special guest today, Jonathan Mueller of Conservative Review TV. I'm sure you guys have seen him all over Facebook. Guy is super popular, great videos, great energy, and I'm very excited for this. Thank you for joining us, Jonathan.
It's good to be here, James. Are you sure we're not related, by the way? We have the same last name.
Yes.
We kind of look similar, too.
Right, yeah. It's a very unique last name, for sure. I don't know, maybe way back in the past, you know, maybe. We'll look at,
you never know.
Yeah, we'll 23andMe afterwards here, and we'll see what we find. Okay, all right, well, you know, let's get right into it. Big news of the day. I'm sure you've already done stuff on it and commented on it, but man, Brett Kavanaugh, the judge that is the nominee for the Supreme Court from President Trump, he is getting in more hot water now. There's these accusations that came out over the weekend. You know, now there's these calls to testify. This woman accused him of sexual assault when they were in high school at some party. It's this huge situation. It's blown up. Democrats are demanding investigations. Some Republicans are demanding investigations. What is your take on all of this?
This guy should have been confirmed yesterday, all right? All of this is political theater. It is total pageantry. It's desperation from the Democrats. Now, we have this Christine Blasey Ford lady who is now accusing that over a quarter of a century ago in high school, there may have been an incident, she's alleging attempted sexual assault. You know, the problem is that it's impossible, not impossible, but it's very hard to actually prove sexual assault that just happened, let alone over 30 years ago. So there's really no way to prove this. So I don't exactly know what the attempt here is other than to shame his character, which is a shame because, she could either be making the thing up completely, she could be making parts of it up, she could be misremembering things. There's no way to actually know because it's he said, she said. Right. And actually, the only other person corroborating the story says it didn't happen. The dude who was in the room at the same time, his friend who jumped on top of them to stop it, he said that he doesn't have any memory of this happening. And then we have the 65 women who still haven't retracted their approval of Kavanaugh. So all of this is really questionable. And a guy who has an impeccable professional record, it's a little bizarre that now, after he's gone through background check after background check after background check through the FBI, now all of a sudden, you know, there's this issue that's arising at this really interesting moment in time. We haven't heard from this lady. And then for the first time in 30 years, now she wants to talk about it.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's definitely he said, she said. There's no real proof of it other than both of their testimonies. You know, she accuses him. He denies it. The one witness that was there denies it. I mean, there's nothing you could go off of. And I don't know if you saw it, the Washington Post had this report that basically said, you know, she did mention this to a therapist back in 2012, but the thing is,
the therapist, the notes don't even match.
Right, the notes don't match. Yeah, it's she said that, you know, first of all, she didn't name Kavanaugh in the notes. Second of all, she said that there was like 4 guys in the room or something like that when this went down. So the notes don't match the story she's telling now. So it's like, what are you going to do? You can't accept that. That's not factual evidence. Right. So it's just.
So there's going to be hearings, and then, you know, and then what? Because we're not going to. I mean, there's really nothing here. So, you know, unless someone like Jeff Flake or a Republican deflects, you know, it's really not adding to the story at all.
Right, and you know, it is interesting that this wasn't brought. I mean, first of all, this wasn't brought up when he was approved to be on the circuit court. You know, back when that nomination happened, and she didn't. And she didn't bring this up when he was on the rocket docket or rocket list or whatever it was called. You know, he was on the short list for being Trump's nominee. But, you know, this comes out right now. And I know that, you know, well, here's the thing that's really bothersome is that she raised these allegations back in July, right? She sent a letter to Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein sits on it for 2 months until just this moment. Now, you got to be the most.
And don't forget, Dianne Feinstein, she said, we're just doing this to, you know, we have to protect her identity. Well, where was the bravery that Cory Booker showed? You know, why doesn't Dianne Feinstein have her Spartacus moment with these damning allegations? It's because she knows that they're actually not that damning, and she actually has nothing. But now they're desperate. So at the very 11th hour, now they're coming out. And after all of the accusations that the Democrats have been making throughout this entire process, these baseless allegations about Kavanaugh, now they're surprised that we're kind of not believing their story here.
Well, right. I mean, look, it'd be one thing if Feinstein came out back in July and said, listen, this person sent me a letter. These are worth looking into. I mean, we had the whole Me Too movement thing, right?
Right.
And this looks, you know, sexual harassment's big on the news, big deal, believing women, that kind of thing. And she sits on these things. She sits on these allegations for 2 months and says nothing. Now, look, you can you can make the case that, yeah, this is a big deal and it should be looked into. But if it's a big deal, why is it being brought up now? That question has not been answered.
I think you know the answer to that question, as do all of your viewers.
Yes.
It's just the Democrats who seem to be playing, who seem to be kind of coy about this.
Right, and it's not even just the Democrats. Did you see that? So the accuser, Ford, she went to the Washington Post as well and talked to a reporter about it and gave more of an in-depth, her portrayal of what the events that happened and more of an in-depth explanation of what went down so many years ago. But now, this reporter was on, I think, CNN this morning and said that she knew about the allegations back in July. So it wasn't just Feinstein who knew about the allegations. This Washington Post reporter was also told, and now this is the first time she's telling us anything about this. So again, it goes back to the thing, if it's sexual harassment, it's a big deal. Why are we just hearing about it now?
Right. I mean, and I think it's rather clear that there is at least a little bit of a political objective here, because it's like otherwise we would have been hearing about this a lot earlier. They thought that they had all of this stuff that was going to take Kavanaugh down, and now they're realizing that none of that stuff worked, and so they're pulling this out at the 11th hour.
Yeah. You think the media and the Dems are kind of coordinating on this? I know you probably see a lot of their chatter and stuff on social media, and that, everyone's making the Anita Hill comparison. You have the Washington Post reporter kind of withholding this evidence. So it looks like a definite
I have to imagine, James, that it's at least, if not organized from the top down, that there's sort of an implicit directive that we're going to work in concert with the Dems to make sure that this guy doesn't get confirmed. And it doesn't have to be a directive. Someone doesn't have to go and say here's what you're going to do and we're going to organize this all. But they're all liberals, James, and they all have the same ideas. They all have the same objectives. And so whether or not it is formally coordinated or not, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks like someone, one team is running front here, one team's running point here to try and back up the other. So it looks, it just doesn't seem right. Something seems unseemly about it. I mean, we just saw today, Dick Durbin is basically saying, yeah, we want her to testify before the committee, but no. This week is too soon. Too soon? I mean, you're saying.
Right. We heard this was an emergency.
This is an emergency to go crazy about and delay this investigation, but we can't hear about it just right now. It's unbelievable.
And this is why people are so frustrated with Washington, because it becomes clear that all of this is just a game for these people, and they're using. I mean, say for instance that this poor girl was actually sexually assaulted. How does she feel being used as a political prop for these people to stall this guy's nomination? I mean, they don't actually care about the people. It's one of the Democrats' favorite games to use. I mean, they do it to women, they do it to people of color. Now they do it, to LGBTQ communities. They just use them as props, and then once they're done with them, they just kind of let them go and say thanks for the help.
Yeah, basically. No, it is sad because, look, she is being used as a tool, right? I mean, if she came forward with these allegations and they're just being brought up now, it definitely looks like she's being used, and it's terrible. See, I don't know if you saw before we started recording here, it basically, they just Chuck Grassley came out and said, listen, we'll set up calls to have, follow-up calls with both Kavanaugh and Ford and try to hash this out and even set up a testimony time. And Feinstein's not working with him. She's not returning Chuck Grassley's calls, who's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So she's not even trying to get this thing, she's not trying to get this thing out in the public and have an actual investigation of anything. She's just sitting on
anything they can do to delay it. And, hopefully in their ideal scenario, we get delayed past the midterms, and that way they can have their seats back, and then they hopefully can't get them confirmed. But, the Republicans have, an obligation to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so you think that's the game plan for Democrats? They're basically going to delay. They, the November midterms happen, and then, I guess nothing happens in lame duck, and then they somehow stop it. I mean, what is the game plan here?
That's what it seems like. I mean, I don't know if it's that coordinated. I think it might just be, let's delay this until we have enough seats to make sure that, he doesn't get confirmed. But, they're obviously not going to say that out loud, so we can only speculate.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, this whole 11th hour thing, and they're trying to jam up the process and stop this nomination vote. It just stinks of desperation. The fact that, again, Feinstein sat on these allegations, and now we're here. Everyone's wondering what's going on in the Senate. Are they actually going to move forward with the vote on Thursday? The Senate Judiciary Committee is supposed to be voting on him. I mean,
No,
it's just...
and it's shameful because, you know, this entire Supreme Court nomination process is supposed to highlight our justice system, and instead they are using it as a political circus and really making a mockery of our justice system. And, you know, I understand that you can't really these days separate anything from politics, but this wasn't always a political process, and it is so clear that this is just a partisan effort at this point.
Right. I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg pointed that out last week. She's, you know, of all people, the most probably the most liberal Supreme Court justice said that all the Kavanaugh hearings were kind of this sideshow. You know, they're just going crazy. They're posturing. They're trying to derail this thing. And like you just said, it's this huge partisan thing that it was never supposed to. This never happened in the past. You know, most Supreme Court justices were voted on and approved by the other party when they were nominated. It was just kind of a thing that happened. Now it's just changed.
Right. I mean, you had, you know, Sass, I think, brought it up in one of the hearings. Like, you had the people, you know, going into the hearings and screaming and shouting, and, you know, you had the histrionics. That's not necessarily new, but the dragging this along like this and actually making it so that he's not going to get confirmed, that's new.
Yeah. So we don't know what Republicans' plans are right now. You have some calls that are basically, you know, maybe we should indulge on this thing. We should hear her out. We should have testimony from Ford. You're the Conservative Review White House correspondent. Are you hearing anything about what's going on? Do you know what Republicans are trying to do? Are they just kind of like waiting it out to see exactly what occurs if Ford actually speaks out more?
So, you know, I did hear, I have to confirm this, but word on the street right now is that Sarah Huckabee Sanders is holding a press conference day at 4, which was previously unannounced.
Okay.
So I don't know if she'll address some of these concerns later this afternoon. I don't know when this airs, but, you know, essentially, you know, today she's supposed to address those concerns. Kellyanne Conway said, you know, this morning that, you know, she believes that the accuser has the right to be heard. I agree. I think that, you know, let's hear these concerns. My only concern is what I said at the top of this, which is that it's just going to be her word. There's no additional evidence, and she's only implicated 2 people, Kavanaugh and Judge. So. Right. They both denied it, so I really don't know how much additional evidence we're going to get. And the FBI has already said we're not going to do an investigation on this. So happy to hear from her. She has a right to speak, and she has a right to have her story told. I just don't see any developments coming from it.
Yeah, are you surprised President Trump hasn't weighed in? I think everyone's kind of like...
yeah, on the edge of their seats.
Yeah. Is he going to say anything? Because, I mean, yeah.
You know, with him, it's you just never... You never know. You know, when you think he's going to say something, he doesn't. And when you think, you know, he's going to keep his mouth shut, you know, he comes out of left field with something totally unexpected. So, James, I've actually given up on predicting anything when it comes to Trump. You know, he's just such a wild card, and there's so many X factors that, you know, there's just anyone who says, you know, I know what Donald Trump is going to do in the next, you know, month or so, even in the next minute, are lying to you. He's the most unpredictable player we've seen in politics, I think, ever.
Definitely agree with that. I mean, I was surprised he didn't tweet out something at 5 a.m., you know, lambasting her and the whole thing, but, you know, he still might do that.
I get notifications for his tweets, and it was like 7 this morning, I think, and it was just like my phone every 3 seconds buzzing, because he's tweeting about the hurricane, and, you know, their tweets are coming in Spanish and stuff, and I'm like, what is going on? But not a single tweet on this, so, you know, you just don't know.
All right, if you can make a prediction, though, about what Republicans do for this, you know, do they push ahead with the vote? Do they wait it out and see? Or do they, you know, Mitch McConnell is a pretty canny player. You know, he might say, yeah, we'll wait, but then he'll just call a vote anyway. What do you think they're going to do in the end?
I think ultimately they're going to say we're not going to let these 11th hour accusations derail our entire process. I think. You know, I think there's going to be some Republicans who definitely want to show, you know, hey, you know, we don't want to lose, for instance, female votes in the midterm, so we're going to, you know, lose Kavanaugh and take him as a loss. But I think overall the party will come and say, you know, this is, you know, there's no basis to these accusations, so we're just going to let them go.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, well, I guess, you know, we don't know what's exactly going to happen, but we will see. I want to get your take on some more parts of the news real quick. You know, we covered the big one, Kavanaugh. That's the huge news of the day. But you're really, you know, you're a tapped in guy. You know what's going on down there in Washington. I want to get your take on a few things real quick. It's called maybe like a lightning round. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right. One thing I ask everybody that comes on here, or at least I try to ask, is who is the Democrat candidate that is probably the most dangerous person to take down Trump in 2020, in your opinion?
You know, I would say, and you're going to laugh at this, but I would actually say Avenatti.
You think Avenatti?
Because I can't see, to compete with Trump, you have to have, or Oprah, for instance, but she's already, I think, said that she's not going to do it. But, I think to compete with Trump, you cannot be a product of the Washington swamp. I think that, so anyone like Liz Warren or Cory Booker or even Kamala Harris, they all reek of Washington. Mm-hmm. And I think that the American people are sick of that, even on the left. That's why Trump took so many Bernie folks, because, people are just sick of the way things are being run. So I think that someone who's complete, from left field and outsider, has an actual chance. I think Trump will take the win in 2020. But I think in order to fairly compete, or at least to respectably compete, it has to be someone completely unexpected that is not a product of DC.
Interesting. He's already taken shots at his other 2020 rivals right now. He's making his rounds on the media. He was just on Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson called him the creepy porn lawyer, and trying to smear him.
And you know what is, when you're in, we kind of end up in these camps where, we don't hear the other side. I watched that Tucker Carlson, and of course I'm more sympathetic to Carlson than I am to Avenatti. Right. I watched that interview and I said, Tucker Carlson slayed him. He just destroyed him. But then I went on Twitter, James, and on Twitter, everyone on the left is saying that Avenatti, handed it to Tucker and, and completely destroyed him. So there's passion out there on the left. There are people that are behind Avenatti. There are people that see both him and Stormy as liberal heroes because they are, taking down Trump, or at least attempting to. So I wouldn't underestimate the kind of support that sheer opposition to Trump will get you.
Right. So speaking of speaking of passion without substance.
And substance, I don't know about that.
Probably not two words you put together. But yeah, speaking of passion without substance, Ocasio-Cortez, she's constantly making the news. She was just featured in a meme that was basically making fun of her. She wears this $3,000 outfit and goes around saying that she's this warrior for the working class. She just gave this interview with Jake Tapper where she looked like an idiot and she couldn't even explain how she's going to pay for all her socialist programs. What is your take on her? And, there is this kind of nascent thing on the left that's like Democratic socialists. They want more candidates like her. What's your take on all that?
Has she ever, James, given an interview where she does not look like an idiot?
No, not at all. Never.
I haven't seen one appearance where I'm like, you know what, she has her stuff together. I disagree with her, but she's right. I mean, if she knew what was best for her, she would not do another interview ever again. Yeah. I mean, she doesn't need the publicity. She doesn't need to do these interviews. She's going to win. I mean, have you seen her opponent? Her opponent's an embarrassment to the Republican Party. And so she's going to win. She doesn't need to do any more media appearances. So I don't know why she's going around, making a fool out of herself on TV, doesn't know how to pay for anything, doesn't know how economics works, doesn't know the first thing about the Constitution or America as it was founded. All she knows is that she wants to change it into something that is completely unsustainable. So, she just needs to stay quiet and she'll win her election. But, I guess I'm trying to talk reason to someone who knows nothing about it.
Yeah, it's like talking to a brick wall. Well, I mean, she's going to probably win, she'll win her election. I mean, the district vote's 90% Democrat or something ridiculous like that. Right. So she'll probably win, and we'll probably think we're going to hear about her more in the future. You think that, reporters will seek her out to get interviews with her?
I think she's, in a way irresistible because she's, attractive Hispanic girl, insane, crazy ideas, extremely radical. So for the media, it's a slam dunk because, she provides so much content. And for our side on the right, she also gives content because she is, she's so stupid. But I think that, she's going to ultimately divide the party. You see all these conversations talking about, is the party with the Ocasio-Cortezes of the world or with the Nancy Pelosi's of the world. I still don't think her ideology, I don't think her brand of liberalism or democratic socialism or whatever you want to call it, I still don't think that it is viable nationally. So I think that, the Democratic Party is really having a struggle to figure out where they are right now. And some people are saying that is the future of the party, but I don't think the numbers are there yet. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. So on that note, 2018 midterm elections, you have a lot of people talking about the blue wave. You have a lot of people talking about at least Democrats possibly taking the House, maybe not the Senate. Republicans have a big advantage there. What do you see going into 2018 happening?
I think, my predictions could be absolutely wrong. I think that everyone's predictions could be wrong. I think if 2016 taught us anything, it's that, the polls And, all of these experts who say they know exactly who is going to win, even Nate Silver, I mean, can be wrong. So, take all of these predictions with a grain of salt. I personally think that, we'll lose the House, keep the Senate. But we will have to see, because there was I saw something this morning saying that, Republicans might actually still be able to keep both. You never know how these elections are going to run until, 2 minutes before they actually call the results. Right. So, I think that it will be instructive for us to learn from these elections, because, I think what everyone is trying to do right now is trying, the old system is dead, and the old way of, campaigning, the old way of doing things, that's all completely been destroyed. And so I think people are now trying to understand how this new system that, kind of has been created since Trump got into office works. And so I think the midterm elections, we've only had special election results to go off of. And, those aren't that informative because there's so many different factors. So, I think this will at least maybe help provide a rubric as to, what both parties look like, and then help us in 2020.
What do you think Republicans have going for them? I mean, see, they have the economic message and some other things, but what do you think is their main argument to get people out in 2018?
I think they have Trump. And, I think that, love Trump or hate him, you don't have to be a Trump fan to acknowledge that, I mean, he is the best thing right now that the Republicans have going for him. Whatever it is, and I'm not going to discuss what exactly it is, but the numbers show that when he comes in for a candidate, we've never seen numbers go up like this before. Right. So the effect that Trump has on the Republican Party, he's gotten things done that no other Republican has been able to get things done. And so, that comes with pluses and minuses. But I think that, you would have to be a fool to deny the power that Trump has. And right now, I think, and ultimately the Republican Party, we're going to have to come up with something more than just Trump, because that's not viable in the long term. But right now, that is absolutely where the party is. He is the leader of the party, and he's doing things for the party which no other politician on the right has been able to get done. So, you have to acknowledge that. So
what about, definitely Trump, elephant in the room. Yeah, as a figurative speech, but he is a Republican. So, big elephant in the room. What about impeachment? I know that's the big argument Democrats are kind of making, and that's also the big argument Republicans are making, too, that, listen, Trump's going to get impeached. We had Kayleigh McEnany, the spokesperson for the RNC, on not too long ago, and she basically said straight up, listen, if Democrats take back the House, they're going to impeach Trump. You need motivation to vote. That's your motivation.
Right. And impeachment is of course a political process. So, they don't really need a reason to impeach him. But I think that, you want to talk about this country division in this country. And, you want to talk about what this country will look like if the Democrats actually try to impeach Trump. I think it's real ugly. And I think that, if we have any chance of coming back together and, and resembling the America that, we knew before all of this kind of insane, this political landscape that is absolutely torn apart right now, I think that it would be a foolish move on the Democrats' part to impeach him. And then what happens after that is the other thing. So it is motivation to get people to the ballot box, but I think that it would be a political disaster if the Democrats did that.
Definitely. Speaking of political disasters, Hillary Clinton was out this morning. I mean, she posted this article in The Atlantic calling for basically the abolishment of the Electoral College. I don't know if you caught that, but basically she's saying...
I wonder why she doesn't like the Electoral College.
Yeah, I wonder why the loser hates the thing that calls her to lose. I wonder.
This is actually, believe it or not, this is a story that I missed on Hillary. I have banned Hillary from my segment, The White House Brief, so we no longer cover her.
Yes.
She is irrelevant. She is unpleasant to listen to, and so I want nothing to do with her. So I missed this story, but if she wants to, that doesn't even make sense. That's something our founders set up. That's something that we've had. There's reasons for it, and unless you can come up with an argument that's just not this. I lost because of the Electoral College. Right. I don't think we really need to pay attention to what Hillary Clinton is saying.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are with you on that one. Real quick, you just mentioned that you follow you have the White House briefing, you follow the press briefing that happens. You mentioned the Sarah Huckabee Sanders hearing, or the press conference coming up. What is the craziest thing you've ever heard, or in your own personal opinion, the craziest or most dishonest thing you've ever heard go on in that press room? I mean, we see a lot of stuff every day, but if you could pick one, I know it's going to be hard. I know it's a hard question, but if you could pick one, just one, the craziest, most offensive thing you ever heard asked of either Sean Spicer or Huckabee Sanders.
The most offensive thing, I think, is when Brian Karem, who is, Playboy magazine, their White House correspondent, because they have one.
Yeah.
Everyone reads Playboy magazine for their White House coverage.
For the columns, yes.
I think the most offensive was when he was at the podium asking Sarah Huckabee Sanders if she had ever been sexually assaulted at the office.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
that is just such a personal issue for him to, in front of a bunch of reporters and expect Sarah Sanders to give, an account, of sexual misconduct right on the stage is just, preposterous. So I think that was the most offensive thing. In terms of the most ridiculous thing, there's so many. I think that, what you have to remember is that these people, most of them claim to be fair, honest, and objective reporters, which is interesting. I don't claim to be objective. I'm clearly on the right. And, in many ways, I think that is more honest than the people like Jim Acosta and like April Ryan who claim to come at these stories with no agenda when clearly they do. But it's even worse than that, James, because not only are they making biased accounts of stories, but we've seen they're literally just making things up. I mean, there's numerous instances where CNN, Sarah Huckabee Sanders hasn't held or the White House, they haven't held a press conference in over a week, the day after Trump's Helsinki summit. And it's just like, I don't know how you guys think you can get away with this.
Yes.
We, of course, have the curtain gate where, the New York Times said that Nikki Haley spent, how I have the number here, $52,000, $701 on curtains, turns out to be Obama's. And then, they issue a correction and say, we understand we may have, people may have misinterpreted it or whatever.
It's the reader's fault.
You put Miss Haley's curtains. I mean, how is that going to be interpreted?
Right.
I mean, so I think the most ridiculous stuff is that, they just have no problem making up stories. Their sources, I mean, I facetiously said, how do we know the New York Times has, an anonymous source, and it's not one of their editors writing that, anonymous source piece. Now, I said that facetiously, but the point I was making is that, why do we have any reason to trust a word these people say when we have them on record making things up? CNN, there was a story a while back where they said Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Trump is very upset with her response to one of the Rob Porter allegations. And then buried at the bottom of the story, they say two sources say that this is not true, but one unnamed source that's close to the White House, not even a source that's in the White House, one unnamed source that's close to the White House says it is. So we're going to go with the one unnamed source. So, I think that the worst part is just when they make things up. New York Times also making things up. Remember when they called Pompeo, they said he was AWOL. Meanwhile, he was going to North Korea to rescue the prisoners. I mean, it's just they just make stuff up, and so that's bias is bad. I think bias is fine if you're if you're transparent about it. But what I can't stand for is the making stuff up out of thin air, which is a lot of what we're seeing these days.
So you mentioned big hot topic that was last week and a week ago, the anonymous New York Times op-ed, Washington's favorite parlor game of guessing. Do you have a guess of who wrote it?
No, and I don't care. Everyone in Washington scrambling around trying to be like, who is it? So it's probably going to be someone we've never heard of.
Yes.
I think the more important, it's interesting. We did not. You have to remember that this is not something that the American people really care about, because if you read that story, same thing with the Woodward book. You read the Woodward book,
right?
Some of it's like, oh wow, that's a little surprising, but none of the characteristics. Like we all know Trump can be petty. We all know that Trump can be vindictive. We all know that he waffles on issues and sends go out one day say one thing, change his mind the next day, go out and say the next. And so the broad characteristics that we're seeing in these anonymous op-ed pieces are not, those are all things that are baked into the cake with Trump. And I don't think that they're anything that are going to surprise the American people. And you see that because I don't think that the American people care as much as they do in Washington. So in Washington, you see people, are still scrambling to figure out who it is. I don't think the American people actually are concerned. I think what the American people are concerned about is that anyone in the White House is governing or trying to govern against the will of the people. And I think that, they are concerned that there is apparently an insurgency within the White House that is actively working against the president that they elected. But, unless that person turns out to be, the vice president of the United States or, the secretary of state, all the people, or, Mike Kelly, all of who have denied it, I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. It doesn't really, it's going to be some mid-level nobody at some far-off cabinet department that nobody knows about or cares about. So
Right.
I think most people have moved
and that
on.
also brings into question like how much of the allegations that they made in that piece are true. You know, does this person actually, you know, have access to the Oval Office, and is this person actually, you know, in charge of papers that cross the president's desk, or is this a person who's heard about these things and is relaying it, you know, to somebody who related to someone else, you know, through a game of telephone, and the message gets a little warbled. So
Yes.
You know, we'll have to see. If it's a big name, I will care. But until then,
yeah,
you know,
who cares at this point? All right, Russian collusion. Did it happen? And if not, is it time to get rid of Mueller?
I think if the Russian collusion story had any evidence to it, we would not be seeing stories like Curtain Gate. We would not be seeing stories like, you know, the white power, Kavanaugh, you know, the white power sign, the girl behind him doing the white power sign. None of these stories we'd be seeing these stories, or we would not be seeing the, you know, this Christine Blasey Ford story. I think all of these stories reek of desperation, and I think the reason why they're so desperate is because they know that there is absolutely no Russian collusion. Every single bombshell, you know, for over a year has turned out to be a complete dud. You know, CNN has been running. It's like the, you know, the Malaysian plane disaster for CNN.
Oh, right, yes.
Nothing's there. There's no developments. There's no breaking news. You know, they'll pick a story from a year ago with, you know, the Trump Tower meeting with that Russian agent, and they'll recycle it and try to come up with something new. But honestly, if there was something to the story, we would have seen it already. I mean, this investigation's been going along for over a year and a half, I think, and, you know, we're now talking about Manafort and, you know, some tax troubles that have nothing to do with the Trump administration. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And so, you know, I do find it interesting that, you know, while they're finding all of these minor charges on Trump associates that happened a decade ago, all of the actual collusion that's been happening at the FBI and the DOJ with Strzok and Orr and Page and all of those players, that's being completely ignored, and the Mueller probe has no interest in looking into any of those alleged crimes. But I think that, you know, I think it's time for Mueller to wrap it up. Now, does Trump fire Mueller? No, but I think that, you know, if Mueller were an honest guy, he would realize there's nothing here and end the investigation.
Okay, all right. One final note, one on a very light topic here. Taco Bell is under fire because one of its franchises in Miami denied service to a person who was trying to order in English. And I guess the clerk said that we don't take orders from people who ask for tacos in English. I just before you coming in here, I saw this. I was like, my goodness, are you kidding me?
I could not stop laughing during that. I mean, it's just the most absurd spectacle. Here you have this poor woman who pulls up to the Taco Bell store. She wants to order dinner.
Yeah.
And she's being yelled at by the Hispanic workers, you know, saying, we don't take orders in English. This is Hialeah. We don't take orders in Hialeah. We don't speak English here.
Yeah.
She was fired. She should have been. But I couldn't stop laughing. But it does say something about, you know, where we are as a country, where this multicultural this multiculturalism that we're seeing, where, you know, there actually is an employee who thinks that it's okay to tell an English-speaking customer, you know, we're not going to take your order because of the language you speak. And so while it's hilarious, I think that, you know, we should pay attention to this as we slowly see the country change.
Yeah, it's kind of a sign of the times, really.
A little eye-opening, yeah.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know. A lot of these things I always think link back to Trump. You know, I think Trump turned a lot of people's brain to mush. So you have someone who thinks it's like okay to be like, all right, well, I'm going to screw with this English-speaking person now because I'm a Taco Bell employee and I can, you know? So I guess she can go spend her $2.50 on her dinner elsewhere.
The question I had when watching that video is, how did the Taco Bell employee understand what the woman was saying? Something tells me she actually does speak English, and she was just pretending not to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if she's like, listen, we don't speak English here. Telling her in English, we don't take your orders in English. So it was a silly story. But yeah, we were just laughing about it before we came in. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because it's pretty ridiculous. But yeah, like I said, a lot of people, Trump turned them crazy and they're willing to do drastic stunts now. So
anyway, they have the TDS, you know, blaming Trump for the hurricane. I mean, he's absolutely, for better or for worse, completely driven the left bat crap insane.
Yes, seriously. I mean, we saw the hurricane didn't do as much damage as expected. Unfortunately, you know, there were a few lives lost, and that's unfortunate. But you know, it got downgraded. I guess if Trump was to blame for the hurricane coming, maybe he's to blame for, you know, talking the hurricane out of destroying North Carolina.
I don't know what the left did, you know, what they did in the Carolinas to appease Trump. Maybe, you know, they made a deal with him and he said, all right, I'm not going to make it rain down too heavy on you.
Yes.
But, you know, that's between Trump and the citizens of North and South Carolina.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan. Jonathan Miller, Conservative Review, White House correspondent. Guys, check him out on Facebook. Check him out on Facebook Watch. I mean, you're burning up the Facebook stream. Every time I open up my app, your videos are always popping up. So, I mean, you're killing it out there. So, congrats on all that and all the success. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully, we'll have you back sometime.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan.